Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Tonight, we're going to have two representatives from two different parts of campus. So we're going to be talking about the Branham Innovation Center and the Kramer Innovation Center. So we're going to have Bill Klein that's here to talk to you guys about that facility. We're also going to be talking about Rose-Hulman Ventures. So we're going to have Brian Doherty here to talk to you about that. I'm going to try to answer all your questions, get some general information to you about those different facilities, what opportunities students have, and what kind of experiences they get while they're on campus. So I'm going to go ahead and step off the camera. I'll be asking questions to our volunteers this evening, but we'll have them on camera for you. So I'll go ahead and ask Bill and Brian to come on. All right, so first thing, I have you guys kind of just talk a little bit about each of the facilities that you run, I guess. So doesn't matter who wants to go first. So Bill, if you'd like to go first.
Okay.
Just kind of give us an overview, what the students do there, what the facilities are about, things like that.
Okay. Yeah, in one of my roles here at Rose, I oversee the BIC and the KIC. They are our campus innovation centers. They host competition teams, capstone projects. We have a number of machine shops. The competition teams, we build robots, race cars, human-powered vehicles. All of the teams operate as a club, so it's like joining one of the campus clubs. As far as resources, we have a machine shop, a welding shop, a makerspace, a wood shop, so lots of ability for students to come in and make things. The makerspace is really the club and the place to be if you want to work on your own projects while you're at Rose-Hulman. They have laser cutters, 3D printers, so you can really go in and innovate and make the things that you want to make. So, a lot of universities will show you their research centers and labs, and we've got those, but here we really try to highlight our innovation centers where students can do hands-on, real-world engineering work and projects, so you can practice being an engineer while you're still a student. And the benefit of that is just, number one, it's fun, right? So we all like making things as technical folks. But you get to practice being an engineer, and when you get to that first interview for an internship or job, it's you have something to talk about where you've done project management or team leadership or built a project schedule or something like that. So I think I'll stop there and let Brian talk.
All right. So I'm the senior director for Rose-Hulman Ventures, and Ventures exists to create professional practice experience for our students. And we've chosen to do that by putting them in a position where they have to act and perform and deliver like a professional. The way we have done that is created essentially a consulting engineering firm. So to the outside world, Ventures looks like a consulting engineering firm. We're staffed with 9 full-time engineers and technicians who are responsible for the projects. They manage the projects in terms of technical content and budget and schedule and all of those things. And then they hire students from campus to come down and work on the projects as either part-time or full-time engineering interns. That staffing level allows us to work on 20 to 25 client projects at any given time, which in turn allows us to hire anywhere from 30, 35 to up to 50 interns at any given time. The interns are actually paid. This is a job for them. It's not something they do for credit. They work part-time during the school year. They can work full-time during the summer. And there are occasions when students can actually work more than part-time during the school year. Generally, that part-time load is about 10 hours a week. The project types that we work on are generally new product development oriented or process development oriented. Tends to be a lot of electromechanical systems and a lot of software systems. We hire heavily from mechanical engineering, biomedical engineering, computer science, software engineering, electrical engineering, computer engineering, engineering design, and then occasionally from the sciences when we need help with optics help or whatever. The program is self-funded. We charge the clients enough money to actually cover the cost of doing the project work. Do that for a number of reasons. One, it's responsible for Rose-Hulman. But 2, if the clients are paying real money for the project, then they expect real results. And it's not possible for us to create the educational experience we want to create if nobody cares whether or not the project's a success. So by charging real money to do these things, then we create the pressure on the team to perform.
Great. Those were great overviews. Thank you very much for those. So what we'll do, we'll go ahead and get started. We had some questions that came in before the chat tonight, but if anybody out there has any, please feel free to put those in and we will get those answered for you while we're doing this. So we'll start, let's see, we'll start with this one. Is there any additional cost to join any of the clubs that use the BIC and the KIC?
No, there's no cost. I mean, they're all student clubs. So the answer is no. You know, all the services we provide, we do 3D printing for students, for campus, for academic projects. 3D printing's free. Joining the teams are free. You know, a team experience is actually fairly comprehensive. In the fall, you do the design and build. The winter, you do integration and testing, and in the spring, you get to go compete with your vehicle, whether it's the race car or human-powered vehicle or whatever. So we'll have, you know, 20 students going to a competition in Wisconsin or Ohio or something like that, and it's all at no cost.
Great. So I know, Brian, you said that students from campus obviously are doing their internships with Ventures. What's that process like for them to get an opportunity down there?
So it's an interview process. We go to the career fair just like all the other companies. We have a pool of potential interns that are interested in working for Ventures. Every time we sign a new contract to do a project, that creates some finite number of job opportunities that then the people who manage the projects then go through that potential hiring pool, bring in prospective candidates, interview them, and then they receive an offer package just like they would with any other company that covers non-disclosure agreements and confidentiality and safety policies and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And then we'll go to all 3 career fairs throughout the year. Then we also do a lot of word of mouth. You know, our current interns that are successful, when they know people who would be successful in that environment, they tend to give us those names as well.
All right. So the next one's for Bill. Do you need to be any specific major in order to use the makerspaces?
No, the makerspace is a student club. Anybody can join any class year, any major. It's as easy as just, you know, showing up and say, I want to be a member of the Maker Club. There's a online quiz and a module you have to pass to get into the BIC and the KIC, but that takes about an hour. So any class year, any major can come in and use the makerspace.
And so that goes for the makerspace, but also for any of the competition teams.
Any of the competition teams, yeah.
So typically students kind of line up probably competition teams with areas they're interested in terms of mechanicals, like, you know, the racing teams and things like that, probably more than some other students, but any student's able to join any of the competition teams that they are interested in.
Yeah, I mean, we've had civils and we've had some biomedicals on the human-powered vehicle team, and have mechanicals on the concrete canoe team. So, you know, whatever strikes your fancy, you're able to do.
Great. Do you think, Brian, you could talk maybe about a couple of projects that you have going on right now, and then maybe some, I know you've had some that you've had students working on for quite some time that have been pretty important to Ventures and things like that. So just kind of go over a few of those maybe.
Yeah, so our projects cover a really wide range of topics. You know, some new projects that we just started literally in the last month. An orthopedic company that makes hip implants wanted us to help create a tool to make that process a little bit more automated, less trial and error in the actual insertion of the implants. Kind of the opposite extreme of that is we just signed on a project to improve the reliability and the quality of water wells in South Sudan. You know, there are 50,000 wells that are broken and people can't get the villages can't get their water out of the well. So that just cries for an engineering project. Over the years, we've had a number of really high profile, very impactful projects. One of my favorites has been, we've been the R&D team for a neurosurgical company for over a decade now. And I have personally, with a team of interns, made prototypes that went into operations inside of people's skulls and remove tumors that save their lives. Early on, these kind of devices are used in tragic cases where there is no other hope. And it's a pretty good feeling, even as an old guy, it's a pretty good feeling when you know that the device you made was used this afternoon on somebody and that person's alive only because of that device. It's a really powerful feeling for the 19, 20, 21-year-olds that are on my team doing that. So those kind of projects come along more frequently than you would expect, and it's a really empowering thing for the interns.
That's awesome. And I know that particular work that you guys have been doing, it's not even just about the lives, but it's also they're becoming less and less invasive, right? So they're actually people that maybe aren't in such a dire situation are still getting a lot of benefit from not having so much downtime after surgery and things like that and damage. Is that correct?
Yeah, the patient outcomes. So the particular client is called NICO. It's one that we can actually talk more publicly about. And the patient outcomes from the suite of technologies that we've helped them bring to market are phenomenal. You've got people going home the next morning after subcortical brain tumor removal. So these are tumors that are below the surface of the brain. Traditionally, those people would be in the hospital for 5 days, actually getting worse after surgery because of the damage done to the brain. With these new devices, that edema doesn't exist, and these people go home the next day. And it's important to us. Part of the reason that ventures exist is to show our students how to function on really complex projects outside of the classroom. So the classroom, by necessity, has to be a little bit simplified so that you can understand the complex concepts that you're trying to learn. But in the real world, they're messy. They don't come to you in a very clean fashion. So how do you get people comfortable with the idea of the messy, complex outside world? And there's no better way to do it than take them and walk them through the projects. And when I hire a new intern and I tell them, look, we've got this brain surgery problem we're going to solve today, and their eyes get huge. And then I tell them, well, the books in my office don't have the answer in the back either, and then their eyes just get enormous, and they're what did I get myself into? But after 2 or 3 weeks, they start to get a little bit of traction, and they start to squint a little bit, and they start to grin a little bit, and they get comfortable, and they start to make progress. And then 10 or 20 weeks out, they look back and I did that. I made a difference. And we're getting them comfortable standing in front of problems that are much bigger than they are. One of the things I tell my interns is in 30 years of being an engineer, nobody's ever asked me to do something I knew how to do. They expect me to find the solution. And we're getting our students comfortable to do that.
Awesome. All right, so we'll bounce back to Bill for a minute. This one's kind of 2 parts, I guess, and I don't know if this is a more local student or not, but the question is it possible to get certified for welding and other shop tools the summer going into freshman year?
We could possibly do something. I mean, to get into the machine shops, you have to have a certain number of class hours. It's about 9 for the machine shop and about 7 or 8 for the welding shop. So after you've taken those classes, then you can get into the shops. Yeah, if you're around and we can schedule our instructors, we could probably work that out. Yeah, I mean, just let us know. I mean, even if you can't do it in the summer, we offer classes, the first week of classes in the fall. So, I mean, it doesn't take that long to get into the shops. So we could try to work something out.
Awesome. And those are classes taught at the BIC and the KIC.
Yeah. Right. When I say 9 hours, it's not 9 credit hours. It's just nine hours on the clock of class. You don't get academic credit for them, but you're learning those skills and get you into the machine shop. Number one, we want you to be safe in the machine shop. Don't try anything unsafe that you shouldn't be doing. We're not going to make you an expert welder or machinist in 9 or 10 hours, but it gets you enough to get in and get started, and you can learn how to use the machines.
I think that's a really good kind of segue, I guess, into talking about the fact that even if someone gets to campus and doesn't necessarily have a specific passion for something, but is just somewhat interested in welding, they still have the opportunity to get very beginner skills down there, the same way that a student that comes in knowing maybe a little bit already or knows that they want to learn as much as they can about welding, you have the opportunity to kind of have
Sure.
both experiences.
I mean, there's a couple of ME classes where they teach more on the welding process and welding theory. I mean, we don't do a whole lot of that in 8 or 9 hours. It's kind of, here's the equipment and here's how you do some basic weld. So there are a couple of points during your time at Rose, depending on your major, where you can get involved in all the processes that we teach.
Okay. Awesome. Let's see. I know we had, for sure, here's a couple questions coming in. Can you participate in ventures as a freshman?
Certainly. It's the rare freshman who is really capable of taking on a part-time job their first term on campus. There's a lot of transition, and Rose-Hulman's a relatively academically challenging place. But there's nothing about being a freshman that precludes you from working at ventures. And towards the end of that first year, and especially going into the summer before the sophomore year, is a prime opportunity for freshmen to get involved. And personally, my favorite hiring mode is actually to pick up freshmen towards the end of their year. And then I'll tend to, I'll have them that summer, and then I'll tend to keep them part-time during their sophomore year. And then they leverage the experience with me and my projects to go off and get some juicy internship the next summer, and then I just kind of repeat that cycle. But other project managers will have different hiring needs. There are occasions where we need upperclassmen with their classes that they've had in those skill sets. There's plenty of place for somebody who's got good communication ability, good problem solving ability, and enough time management skills to come down and play the games.
Great. Let's see. So this next question asks if there's lab classes that are taught, probably more so at the BIC and the KIC. So are there, I guess, typical just lab classes that are taught down there? And if so, do you have any idea how many would ME students have any of those lab classes down there?
Yeah, in the BIC, really aren't any academic classes taught in the BIC. On Wednesdays, a couple of the capstone design faculty will use the space during the day. The KIC is sort of split, sort of half the KIC is classroom and academic space, and that's largely our classes in ME. There's a wind tunnel lab, there's a fluids lab, there's just a couple of general classrooms. So yeah, if you're an ME, you'll probably be in the KIC for 1 or 2 of those classes.
All right. So this next one is kind of a loaded question, I guess, a little bit. Probably, maybe. We'll see. I think it's probably a little bit more Bill's, but we'll see. I think it's a good question though. So, if you have your own ideas and plans for a specific project or venture, can you build and work on those while at Rose-Hulman? Would you have access to the makerspace as well? They said as well as ventures to work on your project. So that's where it kind of is split. So basically, if somebody has their own idea, I guess.
So as a newly appointed person to the IP committee, in general, the Rose-Hulman stance is students own their own intellectual property. I think if you come in with an idea, we're not going to try to encumber that. And Rose-Hulman as a culture tries to make spaces as available as possible to students to work on their own stuff. That is the whole idea behind the BIC and the KIC, really, is for students to have that garage space where they can explore their own innovations and figure things out. Ventures is in the business of doing innovation for paying clients, but even at that, as you would expect, we have some of the nicer toys on campus, and we make those as available as we possibly can to students as well as our staff spend a lot of time helping students kind of outside of the project space that come to us with ideas. We've got over 160 years of engineering experience on staff, and quite often students will take advantage of that just for free advice and things like that. So, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I mean, part of my role here is I also teach in the engineering management department. So we also have classes in entrepreneurship. So we want students to be innovators and entrepreneurs. And as Brian said, Rose-Hulman doesn't lay claim to any of your IP or your ideas or things you develop. And Brian's right that the BIC and the KIC is the place and the space to come work on your ideas. The Maker Club is the ideal entry point for doing that. If you need a tabletop size space, no problem. If you need a room size space, might be a little more difficult to find an entire room for your project or your thing that you're working on. But we love it when students come in with entrepreneurial ideas and want to do the prototyping and building and all those kinds of different things. We have the typical entrepreneurship path is we have a few students graduate and go right into an entrepreneurial role, but it's usually a student is out 3 to 5 years. They've maybe worked at the big company, they've paid some bills and that's been a good experience, but then they get the entrepreneurial bug and want to go, partner up with some of their classmates and they want to, come up with an idea and start a company. So a lot of our students go on to take in ideas and turn them into companies.
You actually touched on a subject that I get questions about every so often. That's the intellectual property stance, I guess, that Rose has. It sounds like the students retain their, I guess, control over their intellectual properties. That
Rose-Hulman doesn't make any effort to own or encumber that. In fact, that extends all the way through ventures. One of the ventures cornerstones is we develop intellectual property for our clients, but our clients own that free and clear. We don't try to retain that and license it back or anything, which is unfortunately quite unique in higher ed. Most colleges take the opposite approach.
Right. Yeah, it definitely is more on the unique side. So that's really great to know. So kind of going back, talking about working on your own projects, things like that. Could you, I guess probably Bill, or either one of you realistically, maybe give us just a few of the unique pieces of equipment that the students have access to in the BIC or the KIC or ventures, but probably more so the BIC and the KIC. So what kind of equipment would they have access to as an undergrad or just in general that they may not have good access to at other institutions?
Certainly 3D printers. I mean, the BIC and the KIC have 6. The Maker Club's got another 5. We have Rays and Prusa and Cetus printers. They've got laser cutters. They just bought a circuit board machine that will print circuit board, and it puts down the ink to do a 2-sided circuit board. Trying to think of what else they got. A lot of just hand tools, basic equipment for both mechanical and electrical. We have some sewing machines. We have some textile equipment. A machine shop with a couple lathes, couple mills, bandsaw. Wood shop with panel saw, miter saw. I mean, it's not a high dollar research lab. I mean, we have some research equipment, some research labs, but the BIC and the KIC are largely open to students. So any piece of equipment that's out, a student can use. So you pretend not to buy the $100,000 piece of equipment and then put that out for students to use. We have a water jet machine. We have a CNC mill. Just kind of going around the different rooms. And
Ventures is relatively well-equipped engineering shop as well. We've got a pretty well-equipped machine shop and a welding fab area. We've got another water jet cutter down there, varied 3D printers, just about any kind of electrical test equipment you could want for building electronics and testing those assemblies. Our interns actually sit at fully professional licensed CAD stations for both mechanical CAD and electronics. So in terms of schematic capture and circuit board design. And then our software folks are full stack developers, both iOS, Android, and Windows actually. So they have all of the traditional software tools at their disposal as well.
Awesome. So that's a good point that everybody on campus has the same laptop. So we all have the same software. We have the Office suite, SolidWorks, and everything. So there's a couple of classes that freshmen take to learn how to do drawing and design. So that really sets the foundation for having the laptop, having the software knowledge. So when you do need to take ideas and create designs, like everybody on campus has the same the same foundation and platform that we're working from.
Great. So the next couple of questions kind of go together. So the first one is, can you elaborate a little bit on the robotics clubs and competition teams? And then the second part of that question is, how are the project teams, Formula SAE, for example, how are they organized leadership-wise?
Okay, so for robotics, over the years, we've had maybe 5 different robotics teams that students join. We have a FIRST robotics team, and you're thinking, okay, well, FIRST is a high school robotics competition, and it is, but so we host Team 5188 on campus. The Rose-Hulman students are the mentors and advisors for the high school students. So we work with Terre Haute North, South, and West. We'll have 30 to 40 high school students come work at the BIC. So it's a chance to, if you're on a FIRST team and you want to continue that association, you can come be an advisor. We've got an underwater robotics team. Build a robot that's remote controlled from the surface, goes down in a big tank of water, does some mission like a salvage or repair. So you design and build that vehicle. We have a Mars rover type competition that students build the robot, traverse over uneven terrain to get from point A to point B. We've got, I'm going to blank on the other 2 here. We do an international competition that's called RoboMasters, which is a little different. Everybody gets basically the same robot, and the competition is writing the software. So the robots are in a competition field, and they shoot and they compete against each other. Some of it is remote control, some of it is autonomous. So that's more about writing the software and integrating all the sensors and coming up with the algorithms for the robots to compete. And I'm blanking on the last one, but I'll come up with that here before too long. So if you're interested in robotics, number one, it's a large focus area in mechanical, electrical, and computer science. It's the whole automation field. And there are a lot of opportunities at the BIC and the KIC to get involved with the robotics teams. The teams are organized. I think that was the other question, right?
The leadership, yeah.
Okay. Teams have a faculty advisor. The students elect team officers, so there'll be a team president, vice president, treasurer, secretary. So the elections take place usually in the winter. The new officers come in the spring. So they're largely student-run and student-led teams.
Great. Are materials covered by Rose-Hulman materials?
Yes. We buy all the materials. If the team travels, we provide trip chaperones, we provide transportation, we'll rent cars, buy airline tickets. If the team needs tools, we don't want students to bring in their own tools. We buy the tools. So everything's provided.
Okay, awesome.
I guess
yeah,
on that, and at the start of the year, each team gets a budget. So the team makes a proposal for what they're going to build and do for the year, and that we get some funding from Rose, some from Student Affairs, and some from our corporate donors. And then that's the budget that you have to live to through the years. You don't get an unlimited pile of money. You have unlimited time, as much time as you want to spend, but we are limited on the budgets.
Okay, great. So this one's for Brian. You mentioned Nico earlier. Are there any other, and I know you obviously have some NDA things that you can't talk about, things like that, but are there any other companies maybe that students might recognize or have some knowledge of that Ventures has partnered with in the past?
Yeah, sure. Our client base spans large multinational companies all the way down to small startup companies, and we like that mix because each type of company brings something to us. But we worked with AgroSciences and Cummins and Eli Lilly and Sony and probably dozens of other large multinationals that you can think of. And then if you're more regional, companies like Cook Medical, which is a large company with thousands of employees worldwide, but it's a privately held company here in Indiana. So the large companies bring a lot of funding. They have pockets that can support large projects, and they bring an interest in hiring our interns as soon as they graduate. The smaller companies are the ones that bring us yeah, we need you to develop this brain surgery tool because we don't have anybody else to do it. Or, we need you to develop this device to help an orthopedic surgeon drill a hole through an intermedial nail without missing the hole, because it was a one-person company. They didn't have anybody else to do it. So they bring us the projects that have a lot of pressure and a lot of stress, and generally are the ones that are the most fun to work on. So we like to have that mix.
That's awesome. And obviously, almost all of our students do internships, co-ops, things like that while they're here. But it sounds like some of those projects can be even more robust in the resume side, just depending on what they are and probably the amount of time that they get to put in over, the course of a year in comparison to what they may spend on just a summer internship. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah. Now, internships have improved across the globe in the 20 years we've been doing ventures. But it's still true to say that the quality of the ventures internship is as good or better than anything you find in industry, primarily because it's my job and our project manager's job to create quality internships. When you go to intern at a large company, you'll get assigned to Fred the engineer, and Fred the engineer already has 60 hours of work to do every week, and taking care of an intern wasn't necessarily in the cards. So depending on how strong the culture of the company is for an internship, you may or may not have a fantastic experience. Well, at Ventures, you will be doing stuff that's very real. So it's easy to leverage that, and it really grabs people's attention when you go to the career fair and you have Venture stuff in your resume. They see that stuff, and then they start asking you questions, and they realize, wow, you really did this work. You really know what you're talking about. So the good thing is we lose our interns relatively quickly to outside companies. The difficult thing is we lose our interns relatively quickly to outside companies. So.
Awesome. Is there a process by which new competition teams or clubs can be started? If so, could you please talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, there is. I mean, a new team has to achieve the status of a club in student affairs. That process is looking at a variety of different issues of space and risk and equipment that's needed. We just had a new rocket club, build a rocket and launch a rocket. So that one, the review for that was fairly extensive in terms of the hazards, what organization is going to oversee it, what people are going to oversee it, because you're launching rockets up in the air and you got fuel and explosions and all kinds of different things that can happen. So that one's still in process. So it's mainly an issue of space, funding, who's going to advise it, and all the risks associated with it. But yeah, there is a process for being able to start new teams.
Great. I know that, let's see, this will probably be mostly for Bill as well, but Brian, you may have something to say about this one as well. What are some of the most unique or interesting personal student projects that you have seen? So yeah, what are some of the most interesting or unique personal student projects that you've seen?
A couple of years ago, students did a single person electric vehicle, they called it. It's a SPEV, SPEV. So they got a chassis, they put a little bar stool on top of it, a little steering tiller, put an electric battery powered motor on the back. So the person could, zip around on campus on this little racer. It was faster than it should have been given the high center of gravity. Really easy to tip it over. But that was just a couple of students got together and said, wouldn't it be fun to build a little electric vehicle you could zip around on campus? Student right now is working on a little robot dog. He 3D printed all the parts and pieces. It's a four-legged little dog, and it'll crawl along like a dog. Probably the most interesting ones are at Halloween. A lot of students will come over and want to build or enhance their Halloween costume. So we've seen masks, We've seen angel wings with LED lights. All sorts of interesting Halloween costumes always come up in the fall.
Very
So
cool.
all sorts of different interesting things.
All right. That's good to know. I had not heard the Halloween
If you want
costume
to work
thing.
on your Halloween costume, bring it on over. We'll
Yeah.
put LEDs on it.
All right. I'll let my wife know that. All right. Next one is for Brian. So, are international students allowed to work as interns at Ventures?
Yeah, we usually have quite a few. There are occasionally client projects where there's export control issues involved, or other reasons that we can't allow that. But that doesn't keep us from having international students work on other projects.
Okay.
And I can't answer all of the visa issues around that, but fortunately, there's somebody on campus that handles all that.
Let's see. How many hours a week can a student work at Ventures? I know you said it's about 10. Right?
Yeah, we generally ask them to target 10. Less than 7 or 8, and it's probably not worth it. More than 12 or 14, and we start worrying that Ventures is becoming too much of a distraction to the full-time job here on campus. There are occasions when people have lesser loads for whatever reason. They're upperclassmen and they're getting to the point where they don't have to have that many classes. And they can work up to 20, but there's actually a hard rule at 20 for part-time work. And then summer, it's 40 or more a week.
And I don't know, this may have been mentioned at the beginning, but Ventures is not on campus. I don't know if we talked about that or not.
I did not. Yeah, we're 5 miles south of campus in a 35,000 square foot building and kind of a nice park setting down there. So
yeah, it's a really nice setting.
It's a nice place to be.
Yeah. All right, next one's for Bill. Same thing. This one's kind of two-partish. What kind of access do the students have to the BIC and the KIC? I think kind of in terms of hours, access-wise. And then the other question is, what kind of access do they have then to the 3D printers and things like that, to the equipment?
So our normal hours are 10 in the morning until midnight. In order to get in, you have to pass an environmental health and safety quiz. It takes about an hour to do that. So normal hours are 10 to midnight. With some additional training, you can be in there anytime. You can be in there around the clock. All the machine shops close at midnight. You can't be in a machine shop after midnight. Nothing good happens in a machine shop after midnight. The 3D printers, this year they aren't self-service. In the past, they've been self-service. So a student could walk up with their job or their thumb drive and run their print. But this year there's a queue that you email into. We'll go back to having them be self-service at some point. And we'd have students, start a job at 6 o'clock and come in at 3 in the morning to pick it up. Even though we are open after midnight, we check the lock logs occasionally, and there's just not a lot of activity after midnight. I mean, students think they want that option and capability, but you've got a lot of other things you should be doing after midnight.
Sleeping.
Like sleeping.
That's good to know. All right. So bouncing back to Brian, since we just mentioned that Ventures is not located on campus, question is, do you provide rides to Ventures, or how do students get there?
Unfortunately, we don't. And I don't ask questions for how to get there. What we tend to do is have the interview on site. And if a student shows up for an interview, and we are willing to assume that they'll figure out how to get there to work. They're pretty creative. A lot of them carpool. I even had a student who somehow or another figured out he could get on what we call the Area 7 bus. It's the old folks bus. And we pick them up here on campus and take them to Ventures. So I don't recommend that, but apparently they were happy to give him a ride. So there's a lot of creativity there.
All right. Next one specific to a competition team, but it really can go for any of them. And we touched on it a little bit, but this one was specific. So does joining the Formula SAE team require previous experience working on automobiles? So like I said, Obviously, that one's specific for that, but in general,
Yeah,
do you have
no, not at all. You don't have to have any experience to be on any of the teams, and you start as a freshman and just kind of pick up all the skills as you go. The Formula team is shifting over to the electric vehicle division. So instead of being internal combustion, the car will have electric motors and batteries in it. So if you think of all of what you need to put that together, it's mechanical, electrical, a whole bunch of software, some chemistry, all sorts of different skills there. So there's a place for anybody on the team. I think as Brian said, when students first come into these projects, you sort of have that blank look on your face, like, I have no idea what's going on. And if you spend some time in the environment and around the people, you just kind of get drawn in and you start to pick things up, and everybody's a bright, motivated student here. So you find aspects of projects that you get excited about and can help with. So part of it is just come over, get involved and work on it and spend some time on it.
All right. So next question is for Brian again. It's like I'm planning these to go back and forth. Are there positions available at Ventures after graduation? If so, what type of positions would they be?
So we have, on occasion, in fact, just last week, we did this. We will hire people who have graduated. It's usually a temporary thing. So somebody who's graduated and maybe they got 3 or 6 months before their job starts, or maybe they're going to go on to graduate school and they've got that summer to kill. We had a student who just graduated this fall. His job didn't start until the spring, so we hired him full time because we really need the full time help at this time of the year. So those kind of positions are available. Oddly enough, you can probably figure out why. Our staff is actually pretty static. We don't have a lot of turnover in the staff. So we don't create a lot of full-time positions to hire students, but there are a fair number of temporary positions.
Okay. Let's see. So getting kind of close to the end of the chat here. So if you have any more questions, make sure you get those in. We're going to spend a few more minutes with Brian and Bill, but like I said, make sure you get those in. We'll try to get through those before we close out here. But so the next question is for Bill. The question is, do classes use the BIC and KIC for projects? So I know that senior design projects and things are done in the BIC and stored down there and things like that. So is that a pretty normal thing, that there are senior design projects down there? And then kind of along with that, do you have any specific senior design projects from the past couple of years that really stick out in your mind?
Yeah, so if you're a senior in an engineering discipline, you have to do a capstone project. So we provide about 50 spaces for capstone projects. So all of ME, EE, so all the engineering majors do capstone projects. There's a lot of them. So each team gets a workbench space. It depends on the type of the project. You'll have capstone projects needing floor space because it's a big project, and others are just more of a smaller thing that can go on a bench top. So yes, we do host those at the BIC and the KIC. Those don't compete with the competition teams. I mean, that's separate, dedicated space. So the competition teams have their own dedicated space. But it's a nice mix of, you've got all of those projects going on with the competition team projects. So you see a lot of your classmates and you can share ideas and experiences there. Past projects, we've done an aquaponics project for a couple of years. Idea is to grow plants and fish at the same time. Plant waste feeds the fish and the fish waste feeds the plants. And if you get the chemistry right, it's a happy symbiotic system. That one's actually an ME, but you're thinking, okay, so there's chemistry, biology, mechanical engineering, all sorts of different things going on there. We've done some horse therapy projects where handicapped individuals respond well to riding a horse. It helps with motor control and balance and different things. So we've come up with some aids and some technology to help put a person on a horse and instruct them on the proper ways to control the horse and maintain balance. We've done a number of corporate clients where a corporate client will have sort of that back burner project that they're not ready to give to ventures yet, but can you explore this idea? So we've done a couple of Cummins projects, some Milwaukee tool projects, where it's the back burner project. They'd like students to explore something for them, and means every year we're doing about 70 projects, so there's a lot that kind of come through the doors there.
Yeah, probably a little hard to remember after a while.
Yeah.
Keep track of.
It's all different industries. Lots of mechanical, some medical devices and technology. We did a radar project. We did a pipe threading project. I say we, I mean it's the students and the capstone teams that are doing those. But
yeah.
But that's part of the excitement of the place. You've got all these exciting things going on. You're building race cars next to horse therapy and aquaponics, and it's just great to have all that going on in one place.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned that as a mechanical engineer and student that was working on the aquaponics, because that's not what you would traditionally think of. It was the same with the NICO project, is that right? It was a mechanical engineering intern?
Yeah, it's a lot of mechanical engineering, some biomedical engineering.
Right.
It's an electromechanical device, so there's a motor, somebody's got to understand the control system of the motor and the mechanics and all of that. Right. So most projects have some software and some electronics and some mechanical, and then support sciences with them. So
yeah, I just think it's interesting because it's always like with that, you would think it would be pretty biomedical to begin with. I mean, when you're thinking about the human body and things like that. So it's
I'm an electrical engineer, right?
Not too much in the bio side.
I pass out when I get a blood test, but I still have been developing brain surgery tools for a decade. So.
Very cool. Let's see. All right. How long is a student able to work on a project at Ventures? Is it just dependent on the job or company?
Yeah, there's a lot of variability there. Some students will come to us and they'll be an intern for just the summer. And they do the summer, they're done. They don't really have the capacity to work during the school year, and that's the last we see of them. And then there are students who will hang around for 2 or 3 years. We like that. It's nice when you have that steady person. You know their abilities and you really rely on them. But at the same time, we kind of encourage them to go find something other than Rose-Hulman Ventures to put on their resume. So I wouldn't call that the ideal situation for the student. But I had one student, she was kind of the exception. She walked up to me in the winter career fair and said, I'm interested in your NICO project, you need to hire me. And I said, okay, prove it. And she did, and I hired her. And she worked for me every school year, but never once worked for me for the summer. So, there's all kinds of variability there.
Very cool. All right, since we've just got a few minutes left, are there any final thoughts or anything that you think we haven't covered so far that I guess any things to give the students?
Yeah, I got a couple thoughts. I think we do what we do. We provide these programs to provide great educational experiences for students. And if we're not, then we're doing something wrong. So all this is focused on the teams and the clubs and the projects to make better students and provide students the opportunity to practice engineering and get practical skills and be a great hands-on innovator and entrepreneur. So it's quite interesting, quite unique. 2 really strong programs really focused on hands-on great student experiences.
Yeah, I am quite free and clear about advising people how to get a job at Ventures. Put stuff on your resume that talks about things you've done. I want to hear about problems you've had to solve, and I don't care if these were class projects, they were something you just did for your own amusement, they were things that you did and you got paid for. It doesn't matter to me. What I'm interested in is a period when you had a problem, you had to conceive of a solution, you tried to realize that solution, i.e. make a prototype, whether it was software, a mechanical system, or electronics, or whatever. You tested that. It probably didn't work because they never do the first time. And then you had to react to that. You had to figure out, okay, what was wrong? How do I make it work? That's what we do day in and day out all the time at Ventures. I'm looking for people who have a track record of doing that. And I don't care if you are a mathematics major or civil engineering major or mechanical engineering major. I want people who can come in and in an interview situation talk about things that they've done. So if you can do that on your resume, you're a shoo-in at Ventures.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the time tonight. We appreciate you guys both being here and being willing to answer the questions for the students. Just a little bit of information, I guess, for those of you that are still on here. If you're an early action applicant at this point, make sure you continue to check your email. We're going to be sending out emails regularly, hopefully with the early action students here very soon with some decisions. So make sure you check those emails. Make sure you get on your applicant portal to find out what those decisions are. I know we're planning on having another live chat next week as well, so continue to check your email for information about that chat that's coming. It's going to be a very, I think, a very exciting chat we have planned for next week. I think hopefully we're going to have an opportunity to get some more I guess, good footage in both the BIC and KIC and Adventures over the coming months that we're going to be able to put on the website, so that everybody that tuned in tonight gets a better opportunity to see some of those spaces and what those facilities actually look like. So make sure you continue to check the website for some of those videos as they come available. But most of all, thank you for logging in. Thank you for spending time with us this evening, and thank you for all the great questions. If you have any further questions, I think you can find both contact information probably out there on the website somewhere.
Look me up, look us up, send us an email, get in touch. We'll be happy to answer any more questions that you got.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. And feel free to reach out to the admissions office. And if we don't know it, we will be happy to pass it along as well. So thank you very much for everything this evening, and best of luck.